Have you ever heard a name that carries the weight of history, the pain of generations, and the unyielding spirit of resistance? Today, we're going to talk about such a name, Kunta Kinte. This isn't just a story from a book or a TV show. It's a powerful narrative that represents the experience of millions. So, who was the real Kunta Kinte? And why does his story still resonate so deeply with us today? Our journey begins in the mid-18th century, in the village of Juffure, in what is now the Gambia, West Africa. Imagine a vibrant community, rich with culture and tradition. This was the world Kunta Kinte was born into, a member of the Mandinka people. He was raised with a strong sense of identity, learning the ways of his ancestors, the stories of his people, and the skills needed to become a warrior and a leader. His was a life filled with family, community, and a deep connection to his homeland. He wasn't just a person. He was part of a lineage, a thread in a rich cultural tapestry. But this world, the only world he had ever known, was about to be violently torn away from him. One day in 1767, while searching for wood to make a drum for his younger brother, Kunta Kinte was ambushed. He was captured by slave traders, bound, and forced onto a journey into darkness. This was the beginning of the Mafa, the great tragedy of the transatlantic slave trade. Along with countless others, he was marched to the coast and imprisoned in the belly of a slave ship, the Lord Ligonia. The conditions were unimaginable, a nightmare of filth, disease, and despair. For months, they crossed the Atlantic, a journey that claimed the lives of so many. Kunta, however, survived. He held on to the memories of his home, his family, his name. He landed in Annapolis, Maryland, a world away from everything he loved. He was sold at auction, stripped of his clothes, his dignity, and even his name. His new owner, a Virginia planter named John Waller, gave him the name Toby. But Kunta refused. Every time he was called Toby, he would insist, "My name is Kunta Kinte." In one of the most heart-wrenching scenes of his story, he was whipped until he finally uttered the name Toby. But even though his body was broken, his spirit was not. He never forgot who he was or where he came from. Life on the plantation was a constant struggle for survival. Kunta attempted to escape multiple times, driven by the burning desire to return to his home in Africa. Each attempt was met with severe punishment. After his fourth escape attempt, his owner hired slave catchers who gave him a cruel choice: be castrated or have his foot cut off. They chopped off the front half of his right foot to ensure he could never run again. This brutal act marked a turning point. While his dreams of running back to Africa were physically crushed, his determination to preserve his heritage only grew stronger. Unable to run, Kunta channeled his resistance in a new way. He began to build a life, as much as was possible within the brutal confines of slavery. He married another enslaved person, Belle Waller, and they had a daughter named Kizzy. It was to Kizzy that Kunta passed on his legacy. He told her stories of Juffure, taught her Mandinka words, and shared the history of their family. He made sure she knew her grandfather's name, her grandmother's name, and the story of her African roots. He instilled in her the unwavering truth that before they were enslaved, they were free. They were Mandinka. This oral tradition became the lifeline of his legacy. When Kizzy was a teenager, she was tragically sold away from her parents, another cruel separation that defined the system of slavery. But she carried her father's stories with her. She passed them down to her son, Chicken George, who in turn passed them to his children. And so on, down through the generations. Each generation heard the story of the African Kunta Kinte, who called the sun Kinte and a guitar a ko. They kept the flame of his memory alive. A secret history passed down in whispers and stories, a testament to the enduring power of family and identity. This incredible generational saga was brought to the world by Alex Haley, a descendant of Kunta Kinte. As a boy, Haley had listened to his grandmother and grataunts tell the story of their family as furthest back person, the African named Kunta Kinte. Inspired by these oral histories, Haley embarked on a monumental genealogical quest. He traveled across continents, piecing together clues from shipping records in London and oral histories in the Gambia. His journey led him back to the village of Juffure, where he met a griot, a traditional oral historian who recited the centuries-old story of the Kinte clan, including the story of the young man named Kunta, who went out to find wood and was never seen again. The connection was made. The stories passed down through 7 generations in America had found their source in Africa. Haley's research culminated in the 1976 Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, Roots, the saga of an American family. The book was a phenomenon. The following year, it was adapted into a television miniseries that became one of the most watched programs in American history. An estimated 140 million people tuned in, captivated by the powerful, painful, and inspiring story of Kunta Kinte and his descendants. Roots had a profound impact on American culture. For the first time, many white Americans were confronted with a raw, personal depiction of the horrors of slavery, not as a distant historical fact, but as a deeply human tragedy. For African Americans, the story was a revelation. It provided a powerful connection to an African heritage that had been systematically erased. It sparked a nationwide interest in genealogy and family history, as millions were inspired to search for their own roots. Kunta Kinte became a symbol of resistance, pride, and the unbreakable connection to one's heritage. Of course, it's important to acknowledge that, since its publication, some historians have questioned the specific details of Haley's research, suggesting that the direct link to Kunta Kinte might be more literary than literal. However, this debate doesn't diminish the story's power. Whether Kunta Kinte was one specific man or an amalgamation of many stories, his character represents an undeniable truth. He embodies the spirit of the millions of Africans who were stolen from their homes, who fought to maintain their identities against impossible odds, and whose legacies live on in their descendants today. Kunta Kinte's story is a reminder that roots matter. It teaches us that our identity is not just about who we are now, but also about where we come from. It's a story of incredible pain, but it's also a story of incredible resilience. It's about the refusal to be erased, the power of a name, and the sacred duty of passing our history to the next generation. The name Kunta Kinte, once whispered in defiance on a Virginia plantation, now echoes around the world as a timeless symbol of the enduring human spirit. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the life and legacy of Kunta Kinte. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that have shaped our world. Let us know in the comments what Kunta Kinte's story means to you. Until next time, take care.